on the Calgary Fitness Podcast. And Scott, this is pretty exciting because you're the first person that's been on the podcast twice.
Cool.
Right?
It's an honor.
Yeah, it's funny. We chatted back December 2nd, and that was kind of a week before these. I mean, this most recent round of lockdowns was kind of it was about to go, and we didn't even talk about your position with the Fitness Industry Council and all that. But I noticed over the last couple of weeks here, I mean, you've done the media tour. You've been really fighting hard for fitness studios to reopen their doors, and here we are mid-March. And I want to know now, I guess, where does it stand now in Alberta with gyms? Like, give me the big picture.
Well, I think it's better than it was a month ago, but the reality is it's still not great. So if you're a large facility, I had a workout the other night at the local rec center, and it's empty, right? And they have limited capacity. They don't have their pools open. They don't have many of their programs opening. And, that's a municipally funded facility. And I can't even calculate how much money they're losing each month just being open. You have, the big box clubs like mine, like Gym Movement, and we're open, but we have the capacity issues, and we still have a lot of members that are nervous and on freeze, despite the safety records and the protocols. You have boutiques that are open and they're trying to pivot, so I know there's some boutiques that have progressed or I guess modified their programming to offer low intensity programming, and it's not really what they do. So, members are saying this isn't really what I signed up to pay for, so I'm just going to wait this one out. You have low intensity studios, kind of like more your traditional yoga and bar, and still was subject to capacity. And then you have, the traditional high intensity spin studios that really just can't open at the moment. And there's the government supports, which are great. You have the rent support, you have the wage subsidies, but even after that, facilities are still losing around $15,000 a month. Some have been fortunate to be able to qualify for the hard hit sectors, the HASCAP loan, but that is a loan, you got to pay it back. It'll get them through the other side, and some are just left out in the cold. They may have opened their doors January 2020 and they don't qualify for anything. So, it's hard to see, but, I worry that there's going to just be more casualties, people that just fold in the towel, throw in the towel and just say, I can't do this anymore. They've poured their whole heart and soul into it. They've poured their life savings into it, their family's money into it. And, it's really heartbreaking to see.
Last announcement from the Alberta government was early March, and we've got this definition of high intensity, low intensity, with the health minister saying something to the effect of, if it's something that makes you breathe heavy, consider that high intensity. Like, what does that mean when we heard, I guess, when you heard him say that? What was your reaction?
It's going to be difficult to manage. It's going to be very difficult to enforce the rules. What does that mean? What is high intensity to you could be low intensity to me, and vice versa. For example, if I teach spin. If I'm on a bike, I can bike for a long time with a mask on, no problem, right? I'm just used to it. If I went and did a yoga class, I'm like huffing and puffing because I just don't do a lot of yoga classes. So high intensity to you could be different to me. So, I think two things happened. One is they made the announcement with no notice. They didn't really talk to us prior to the announcement. We provided some recommendations, and what they did is they took pieces of those recommendations and kind of Frankenstein them together. But from a management standpoint, it's very difficult to manage that. So what we have basically formulated is keep your mask on. And if you can keep your mask on, it's low intensity, right? And the talk test. So can you keep that conversation? But the other thing that we know is members don't like it, right? So members have put up their hand and said, I'm exempt from wearing a mask. We have found out from the government that there's no such thing as being exempt in a fitness studio. You're wearing a mask where you don't come. And so if they don't like the rules at a place that's enforcing it, they go down the street to a place that maybe isn't enforcing it. And it's just been, this stage 2 has been kind of a mess, to be honest with you, from the announcement all the way through trying to enforce it, the lack of clarity on enforcement from the government. People are just quote unquote trying their best. It has been a challenge.
Talk a little bit more about that mask exemption, because that seems a little bit strange to me, where, it's saying that the fitness industry almost seems like you don't have to, like, I don't understand that part. Explain that to me.
We don't understand it either. But what we learned is that there's no such thing in the fitness space as a medical exemption. So if up to this point, if you went into a business, let's say you go to the grocery store and you are medically exempt from wearing a mask, you can put your hand up and say, I'm exempt. I don't have to wear a mask. I have a medical condition. And, the business can't really ask about that medical condition because that's your own private information. So, but fitness has been deemed not essential, which of course we disagree with. But what that means is you're choosing to go into the fitness center versus the grocery store you have to go into. So if you walk into a fitness center today, there's no exemption for mask for anybody who's medically exempt. The answer we were given is those people should not be in a facility, which is very, very touchy. If somebody truly does have a medical exemption, we're basically now discriminating against them. But to no fault of the industry, we're just following the rules the government's provided us.
It almost seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're privileged, and I'm not quoting anybody on this, but if you're privileged to be able to exercise, then you have to wear a mask.
Yes. Yeah, that definitely is kind of the tone. And, I want to make sure that the audience knows I'm not trying to be overly critical of the government, because, getting to know these people, these human beings on their team who are making these decisions, there's no right answer. It doesn't matter what they say, they will get, heat from one side or the other. So they're in a really tough position. I know they're trying to do the best they can. Really what we're looking for as an industry is, as we move into stage 3 here, is what are you thinking? Let's talk about it before it becomes public so we can understand it, so we can help operationalize it, so we can tell you where the pitfalls are going to be. Because what's happened in the last 2 stages is they make the announcement and people flip out, and then they react, and then there's another town hall, and there's damage control, and there's 15 other meetings to clarify. I think we can avoid all that if we're just part of the crafting the actual messaging. And we got a pretty smart group of operators that sit at the table, anywhere from large chains to boutiques to municipal operators. So we got a good cross section. So we're just really trying to help the government, in partnership with the government, saying, okay, these are the concerns, these are the new regulations, this is how you can actually operate your facility, versus us just constantly reacting to what is brought down.
One thing I remember Dr. Dina Hinshaw saying, because I watch every single update from Dr. Hinshaw. It's part of my job. It's what I have to do to get the information out to the public. I remember her saying something to the effect of, well, if restaurants are given a week's notice, why can't other industries? And the answer that she gave was basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not doing a direct quote, but it was basically the industries that have been deemed, that don't need a week's notice, they don't need that much time. And like, from what I'm hearing from you is that you were caught off guard. You had to hold these additional town halls after. We had to get more clarity from the health minister. It just seems like we need more time, or the fitness industry needs more time than just an announcement and then try to open their doors the next day.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, we are getting interview requests. If the announcement was at 4:30 and she was done talking around 4:50, we got interview requests for 5 o'clock, we hadn't even had time to absorb anything. And we also got the sense that our government colleagues found out when we found out. So what we've asked for this time is, if they're going to make an announcement on the 22nd, let us see what you're going to propose on the 20th, right? On the 19th, what is it that you're thinking you want to roll out? Let us look at it. Let us critique it. Let us say what is going to work, what's going to be a challenge. The fact that the health minister said that they're not going to fine businesses, they just want everybody to do their best, quote unquote, has caused a lot of problems, because there are some operators that are really trying to follow the spirit of this. And then you have other operators that are really just trying to push the envelope and get away with as much as they can get away with. And I understand they're in desperate times, but it's put our employees and our associates and our owners in a real awkward position.
And before I ask the next question here, I do want to go back to something that you said earlier. You're not trying to bash the government. You're not trying to say that, this is absolutely wrong. We're all trying to navigate it the same way. But I think that, let's be very clear to the audience here that fitness studios are not given advance warning when these announcements are made, because as you know, I was a coach at Orange Theory for several years, and I had people reaching out to me and being like, any inside information, right? And I'm like, no, I find out when you find out, and we're the ones who have to dissect it, right? So is that what I'm understanding here, is that we're not getting any advance warning?
Correct. And I don't know if our government counterparts are even getting advance warning. I honestly think they found out when we found out. And that to me is dysfunctional in terms of a communication strategy, because there are a lot of holes, right? They didn't address team training. Is it still one-on family? Are you allowed to do team? Because remember, in the fall, it used to be semi-private, so you couldn't follow the same program. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that was omitted. Clarification on pools. Can you swim? So when they rush these decisions, there's a whole bunch of gaps, and then people fill in their own story or rush to judge or whatever. So we want to prevent that this time. We want to sit with them. And if that even meant delaying the announcement by 2 days, fine. If you really are only making up your mind on the 22nd, then let's talk about it and then make it public on the 24th. But we'd like to know how to operationalize this, because, as an owner, you're basically reading what's on the website, and the language is very vague, and then you just try and figure it out the best you can. And it is challenging.
So talk about the communication then that you've been advocating for in your team, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Emily has had a big part in this as well too. Tell me about the conversations that's been going on with the government. I mean, you mentioned some town halls. What are the one-on-one conversations that we're hearing?
Well, the way our association's set up, so we're a national nonprofit, and then we have provincial councils. So Emily's the lead on our Alberta Provincial Council. So she's really organized, got a lot of the studios to come to the meetings. We have a meeting every second Friday, just as owners and operators, talking about what's happening in the industry. And then we meet with our government counterparts about once every week and a half, and give them feedback, ask questions, and then they take our feedback to somebody who's the decision maker, and the decision is made. So that's kind of the process. And the team on their side, it's made up of health officials and JEI, which is Jobs, Economy, and Innovation. So we've asked for additional financial relief. We've asked for a tax credit. So we've asked for some things to help build it up from an economics perspective, and then obviously relaxation on the restrictions from a participant standpoint. I think the meetings are going really well, and I do really sense that they're trying. And again, where I said I don't want to bash the government, we are fortunate in Alberta, and BC and is another province where we actually have this dialogue with the government, because a lot of provinces, we don't even have a seat at the table, right? And we've asked for one, and we've just been told no. and decisions are just made, and it's a one-way street. It's the government to the world. At least in Alberta, what we can be proud of is that industry actually gets to speak to the government. And like I said, they've kind of taken bits and pieces of what we've recommended and put it out in I think a little bit of an incoherent fashion. But at least we have that dialogue. But we're hopeful for stage 3 we can have a much better outcome.
So you mentioned the tax credit there, and I know that was kind of one of the proposals for individuals as a fitness tax credit. I guess are you also saying that the big boxes, or sorry, the big studios should also get some tax credits as well?
Well, what we've asked for is basically on a provincial level. So I'm just talking provincial right now, which is separate from our ask federally. From a provincial level, we receive industry-specific support, especially for those high-intensity boutiques that just can't open. So if you're a spin studio, you're still losing money. We've asked for $40,000 per facility to help them get through this, right? If you and then from the tax side of it, provincially a tax credit, an adult fitness tax credit would be well received. That's separate from our federal ask, which is that fitness be considered a medical expense on your personal tax return.
And didn't you meet with Chrystia Freeland over that as well?
We did. I didn't personally. I'd like to. I think she's just a really smart woman. But one of our colleagues from British Columbia, Sarah Hodson, who owns a chain called Live Well Exercise Clinics, had the opportunity to meet with Minister Freeland in her office. We also had the ability to meet with the Finance Committee, and we actually are in the minutes of the Finance Committee's report to the government, which formulates the budget. And we had the opportunity to meet with the Health Committee, the Health Minister as well. So we've had some pretty high-level conversations. We currently, from an association, we have a letter campaign. So we're asking people to submit a letter to their member of parliament, basically letting them know that we've asked for this to be included in the 2021 budget. And the more members of parliament that know about it, the better the chances that it'll get pushed through.
Now, maybe you don't have the details as to what the ask is for the tax credit, but like, is it a dollar amount? Is it gym memberships paid for? What exactly are you hoping for in that tax credit?
Yeah, so a tax credit is usually just a flat amount. So like $500 you get as a tax credit, which would reimburse the taxpayer around $35 to $50 a year. So it's not huge, but it's something. And again, it just increases the purchasing power of the participant, which will help our industry. It's also the stamp of approval from the government that our industry is good and beneficial. So that will help us basically rebuild our industry. We want to be part of the provincial and the national recovery. We do think that we're part of the solution, and exercise is medicine. And then on a federal standpoint, if exercise, so your gym memberships, your personal training, et cetera, are considered a medical expense, you claim that, especially if you're also claiming different medications or dental visits or what have you, and that is a straight deduction against your income. So whatever your tax rate is, you would experience that as a deduction on your total income.
Me working in the media, I see a lot of these comments will come up, and one that I see that is very common is just work out from home, just do it at home, just run around the block. Like, tell me why that argument is flawed in your opinion.
Yeah, so actually that same question was asked by a reporter to Patch, who, if you don't know who Patch is, he's the CEO of Good Life. And he had the perfect answer. He's like, you could always do that. You could always run around the block. You could always work out at home. That's always been in place. So what do fitness centers offer, and why are fitness centers around? Why do we even exist? And the reality is that people they want this community. They want this special place where they go, where they can turn it all off, right? And I'm a fitness person. I know how to work out. right? I have stuff in my basement. I hate it, right? I do not like it. And it's because, I got my dog wanting to lick my face when I'm working out, which is kind of fun, but it's annoying. You got kids who want your attention. You got, when everything's in one spot, your kids, your work, your life, it all blends together. You don't really get to turn it off, versus when you get to take that hour, you're in a special place, you're at the gym, you have your favorite trainer or your coach or your class or whatever. The rest of the world just tunes out, right? And you have that hour where this is just for me. It's my me time. And it's my time to recharge my batteries. It's my time to find my community, be around my like-minded people. Everybody in this place is trying to get healthier, trying to get better. That's what makes a fitness facility, whether it's a boutique studio or a big box gym or what have you, that's what makes it special. And you could always go run outside. You could always work out in your basement. It's interesting because this year, the cross-country skiing is the new thing, right? And how many people bought cross-country skis, because you can't find them now, and used it once? And now it's in the garage collecting dust. And without professional assistance, you don't create the lasting behavior change. And exercise, an active lifestyle, is all about sustainable behavior change. And to have sustainable behavior change, there's strategies, and usually, not all the time, but usually professional assistance really lends to that. So, it's easy to say, well, just go outside, just work out in your basement. It's very difficult to do.
And I want to pivot and take that idea somewhere else. And I'm just curious if you've heard, conversations about this or musings, but here in Calgary, I mean, we're warming up, like it's going in double-digit temperatures. Is there a possibility for, say, high-intensity studios to pull their bikes out into the parking lot, gather with 10 people, and call that a class? Like, tell me about the logistics around that. I'm sure insurance is involved and all that, but has anybody even talked about that?
Yeah, and that is allowed today. So like today it's +4, so it's probably a little too cold, but that would be allowed. Like I know at Gym Movement, we have our regional group fitness director, Kim Tuttle, teaches a Zumba class outside. And as soon as the ice is gone on the pavement and it's a little bit warmer, we're going to do that again. Because we could put 40 people in a parking lot and, blast the music and what have you. So yeah, you need to make sure you get landlord approval. You got to make sure you have the proper insurance. So that is totally doable. You saw a lot of facilities do that in the summer, right? I live in Airdrie. There's a shopping center. There's a boutique studio there in F45, and they just use this little park, and that's great. So I think you'll still continue to see that. And in the US, where it's warmer, you're actually seeing companies like Equinox build outdoor gyms. Like the whole gym is outside, which really won't work here. It's hard to do in the winter. Your hands would freeze to the bar. But I think people love it, and I think that's going to be here to stay. I think remote training is going to be here to stay. So the pandemic, I think, has brought some things to our industry that will be permanent.
Yeah, no kidding. That's really interesting for sure. And I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned a little bit earlier about, that quote unquote me time. And I was really thinking about it while you answered that question, because I was like, well, does it make me selfish for wanting that me time? And I thought about that, and I don't think it's selfish to worry about your health, your mental health, your physical fitness, all that. I don't think that's selfish at all, especially during a pandemic. So I actually ended up joining Gym Movement in Edgemont for that reason, because I felt that it was like I'd wake up, I'd go work out in the garage. I'm sure you saw some of my garage posts that I put out there. I'm working from home right now, and at the end of the day, I got to take care of 2 toddlers, and then you do it all again. But that 1 hour where you can just kind of sneak away and it's not to the grocery store, it makes all the difference.
For sure it does. And yes, I did see some of your posts. My favorite was when you had the little pink scooter and you were doing push-ups and you were moving your arm out. So that was very creative. So kudos to you for that one. It isn't selfish because you're doing it so you can be a better version of you, and thus you can give more. And, I know with our Her Gym movement clubs, this is a conversation we have all the time with a lot of moms, right? And it's like, I need this time so I can actually be a better, partner in my business, partner in my life, mom to my kids. And the same goes through for dads, right? So it isn't selfish because you're doing it so you can keep on giving. What you see over time is if you don't take that time, you eventually burn out, right? And then unhealthy habits kick in. And what you've seen during the pandemic is, more self-medication, right? More alcohol intake. There's even campaigns now about dry day, right? So they're just trying to say take 1 day a week off of drinking because people are coping the best way they can. And unfortunately, they're choosing less than healthy means of doing that. So by taking this hour, a couple times a week to focus on positive habits, you're going to be so much further ahead versus just trying to, grind it out day in, day out. You got your kids, you got your work, you got your spouse, you got your stresses. You might have a friend that's going through a tough time, so you're trying to be there for them. And at the end of the day, if you're running on fumes, you will turn to less than ideal habits, such as increased alcohol or drug use.
So let's talk about March 22 specifically. You mentioned, even if they make the decision on March 22nd, maybe give us 2 days notice so that we can kind of dissect it, digest it, and then provide our recommendation as to how we want to reopen. Because, I think about some of the studios, like the smaller boutiques, may have an easier time, and I don't want to speak for them, but they may have an easier time than, say, a YMCA or a Good Life or somewhere with a pool, like that kind of thing. So I guess, what is the hope? We've been under 200 or under 300 hospitalizations for quite a while here. So I guess, tell me about what your hopes are for step 3 here.
Well, our ask is that we are allowed to have high intensity group and individual workouts. We understand masks is going to be necessary for any sort of transition in a facility. So you wear your mask when you walk in the door, you wear your mask when you go to the locker room, you wear your mask while you walk down the hall to the studio or to the gym or wherever. You take your mask off when you do the exercise. You put your mask on when you go fill up your water bottle. So we've asked for high intensity to be allowed. We also know that the variants are very concerning to the government due to the higher rate of transmission infection. So, we believe that 3 meters will still be a thing, which is 10 feet. That's far, right? But at the end of the day, I think it is what it's going to be. So, but we do need to have the high intensity open. We need the boutiques to be able to open. We think classes are very well orchestrated from a traffic flow standpoint, from a station standpoint. It's safe, it's effective. So we think we can do that. So that's our ask. Now, March 22nd is the earliest. So that doesn't mean that there's any sort of commitment that that's the day. One of the things that is concerning right now is, yes, we're under 300, but it's gone from 248. I think we're up to 260 now. So it's actually gone up. The R value has gone from 0.95 to 1.07. So that's gone up. So that's concerning. And so hopefully that can stabilize and start to decrease again this week. But that's kind of going the wrong direction. And we are not aware of any single source of transmission in a fitness center during stage 1 or stage 2 to this point. We've asked them to tell us if they find anything out, but up to this point, we're not aware of any transmission. Gym movement, I can say that we don't even have a single case of COVID in our doors, let alone we haven't had to do any rapid response plan at this point. So as a society, where's this coming from? And what to do about it? That's the billion-dollar question. Is it coming from schools? Is it coming from restaurants? Is it coming from people just breaking the rules and going to their buddy's house? We don't know that.
I wanted to take it more federally just for a second here, and you mentioned that some of your counterparts across the country don't even have a seat at the table. What does that mean? What is going on across the country right now?
Well, Quebec, for example, they're now starting to open up, which is good. They're starting to allow high intensity exercises, not in classes, but individually, which is good. Ontario, they're starting to open up everywhere but downtown Toronto and Peel. So Toronto and Peel is allowed to have high intensity group classes with 10 people. Manitoba has classes with restrictions. Saskatchewan has classes with restrictions. BC, I believe, is moving to high intensity classes next week. So, every province is a little bit different. But BC and Alberta, we've at least enjoyed that communication with government versus the other provinces. There really hasn't been that communication with government. Quebec's been very interesting because we have a very engaged association there, and we have some government members that have a sympathetic ear to us, and they've even said transmission isn't happening in fitness facilities, but they were closed for 6 months. And the numbers were still going through the roof. So it just, again, shows it's not happening in fitness centers, but yet the industry was still shut down for 6 months straight. So it's been frustrating.
Yeah, no kidding. One of the questions I wanted to ask too was, because of all these lockdowns and everything like that, like, who suffers the most? Is it the gym goer? Is it the business? Is it the personal trainer? Is it the staff? Tell me who's really, I guess, been impacted the most by this.
Oh, you need A, B, C, or D, which is all of the above. Everybody suffers. It's everybody's impacted. So if you are the customer, the member, and you've had this me time taken away from you, how many people have experienced mental health issues, higher incidences of depression and anxiety. We just talked about the self-medication. That's been tough, especially during the darkest and shortest months of the year. At least now it's a little bit nicer outside. So it's been really tough for consumers. Our staff have been through a whirlwind, right? So if you are an employee and you work for a facility and you've been laid off and recalled and laid off and recalled, that's so tough. And when you're laid off and you're on government supports and you got to phone your bank and defer your mortgage and defer your car payments, and you just got to wonder how you're going to put groceries on the table. And it's just brutal, right? It's heartbreaking. If you're self-employed, normally you wouldn't even get EI. Thank God the government had the supports and allowed people who are self-employed to take advantage of those. So again, same thing. It's tough. I know our instructors and our personal trainers, we keep making fun of the word pivot because they've had to pivot so many times, right? If you're an instructor now you have to check in everybody at the beginning of the class and do the not contact tracing, but the surveys, and there's extra cleaning and sanitization, and you can't just pay more money for that. They just got to do it, right? Everybody's had to do more with less. Personal trainers have had to pivot almost every single month, right? Depending on what the rule is. So I know trainers had to, move online. Then they're allowed in a facility, but only one-on-one. Now they can do team training, but you can't have people do the same program. Then they had to go online again. Now they had the one-on-family or the one-on-one only. Now they're at 10 feet. How do you spot somebody at 10 feet, right? So you got to change the way you program. So every single month they've had to pivot. And then if you're an owner, you're just worried about, how am I going to make it through here? How much debt am I going to have? 97% of people we surveyed said they stopped paying themselves. So I run a business, and when you run a business, you work 50, 60 hours a week, and they're doing it for $0 while they're probably collecting CERB. It's just trying to get to next week. And who is impacted? Everybody's impacted. Your landlords are impacted. because you're probably trying to negotiate with them. Your suppliers are impacted because you might have invoices that you can't pay. So it's a trickle down effect, and everybody is affected.
I want to take another direction then. One thing that I've really seen out of this is greater collaboration between industries and studios and names, I guess, brand names. Talk a little bit about the collaboration that you've seen and kind of the collectiveness that comes into the fitness industry to come out stronger on the other side.
Yeah, that's, with all this negative, there is positive. And the positive is, I think our association, we've been able to gain momentum in terms of more people coming on the calls, more people really fighting for the industry. Now our meetings, we're talking about what happens after COVID, right? Because we're going to be at a point here in the not too distant future where, we have herd immunity, we have vaccinations, COVID's kind of behind us. So now what? When we're successful, I won't say if, I'll say when we're successful getting exercise to be a medical expense, a tax credit, when all that happens, our industry is really going to be poised for a rebound. So what we've done now is we've created relationships. We have boutiques talking to big box. We have big competitors talking to each other, and how can we as an industry get better? How can we grow our industry? We're talking about, how can we get certifications to kind of be transferable, and you're getting these groups starting these conversations, and none of this wasn't even a conversation a year ago, right? So it's like you've brought competitors closer together, you've brought an industry closer together. There's a great sense of collaboration right now. And I think that's going to continue. If you look at the larger industry associations, whether that's Fitness Australia, IRSA in the US, they are way far ahead than Canada in terms of that organization and collective, collaboration. And I think we've made some real strides this last year.
You touched on it a little bit there, where you're really talking some positive stuff there. Vaccinations, you're talking about, there is going to be another side of this, and there are a way out of this tunnel, I guess is the best way to put it. What are you most hopeful for? And let's do it this way: in the next week, in the next month, and let's do the next 6 months. What are you hopeful for?
Yeah, so in the next week, I hope that we can move to stage 3, and I hope the high intensity group studios can actually open their doors. And, I know that's not going to fix everything, but at least they have a fighting chance now. In the next month, I hope the federal budget has exercise and fitness as a medical expense, so you can actually write off your gym membership. And in the next 6 months, I really hope we see the people that are sitting on the sidelines today because they're nervous. I hope they come back. I hope that doctors will be prescribing gym memberships as a normal course of going to the doctor visits. So you get your blood pressure checked, you get your heart rate checked, and they ask you how physically active you are. And if you're not active, here's your prescription to become active. I hope that just becomes part of the normal conversation, and we get those sedentary Canadians to take those steps to work with an exercise professional to start that exercise journey. And those things combined will rebound our industry and, in fact, grow it to bigger than it was before. And there's just so many opportunities. And then I'll even go a step further, where I'd like to see us in 2 years. I'd like to see us with a career path very similar to what Australia has. And so what I mean by that is they have a leveled certification system where you can enter the industry as a level 1, which is, a more entry-level certification. You have a limited scope of practice, but then you upgrade your education to a level 2, and level 3 and level 4. And we have all the institutions in Canada, but they don't work synergistically together. So you have your CanFit Pro or your AFLCA, you have your vocational colleges like Elevated Learning Academy. You have your Mount Royal universities or your NAIT programs. You have your University of Calgary, U of L, U of A, and they're all wonderful programs. And I would love to see a path where you can start, as a level 1 trainer, and over time through distance education and technology, might take you 12 years, but you can get a kinesiology degree without going the normal route, right? The traditional 4 years post high school route, because that just isn't for everybody, right? A lot of trainers that I know became trainers after they were an accountant for 10 years, decided they hate accounting, I want to be a trainer. Well, they can't quit their day job and go to university full time. So we need a pathway for them to get there. And I think Australia has it. Canada, we have the infrastructure in place. We just got to make sure everybody's aligned with working together.
That's really funny that you mentioned that, because that reminds me a lot of hockey referees. And I don't know if you knew this, but I was a hockey referee for a long period in my life, 17 years. And that level system is how we progressed across the country from BC all the way to Newfoundland. It's a tiered system, and you make it up to level 6, right? And it's based on experience, and it's based on additional testing and fitness testing, and you have an exam every year that you need to be retested on. And I like that idea because, yes, it gives everybody kind of that level playing field to be like, if you excel and if you work hard at this, then you will obviously progress up that level. So I love to hear that idea.
Yeah, I have a kinesiology degree, and it's what I did after high school, right? But I have colleagues that, like I said, they were an accountant or they were in a different line of work, different industry altogether, and they didn't enter the industry until they were in their 30s. And now they have a mortgage and a family, and how do they get their level of credentials to the level of somebody with a kinesiology degree without quitting their job to go to university full time? There has to be a way to do it. And I think we've proven that as an industry, we're resilient. There's technology. Let's figure out a pathway for that person to get there.
Wicked. Scott, I do want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for jumping on today. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Any value add before I leave you on your way?
Well, I think your audience is very fitness motivated. It's part of their lifestyle already. I think the biggest thing that they can do is, my ask of your audience is, one, to write your MP. Go to our website, ficdn.ca. There's a letter template, download it, email your MP, let them know that you want fitness to be a medical expense. But then 2, inspire your neighbor, inspire your sibling or your parents or your children or whoever who currently aren't exercising, they're sedentary, they might have unhealthy habits. Invite them to come with you, right? And just say, everybody starts this journey with a single step. I started, you started, come with me, try it out, see if you like it, because the number one factor with long-term exercise adherence is the social element, your workout buddy. So all your audience members all have the ability to inspire somebody to actually get moving. And the world needs movement now more than it ever has. So that's it. Oh, you're muted.
So this is the Zoom day and age where that's the phrase of the century. It's probably going to be added to the Oxford Dictionary, the "you're muted." Sorry about that. I was just saying that's a great way to end it. I think it's, leaving with those wise words, really, really important. I think a part 3 is needed, especially as we try to navigate and juggle and head into the summer, and then you never know about the fall. Hopefully there is that herd immunity by then, but you never know. Let's just leave it there for today. And hang on the line for just 1 sec. I'm going to hit stop on the recording. Okay?
Sure.